Good morning. So as I was thinking about this sermon, what should I preach on? It's not a series from Ephesians. Christmas is sort of gone. Begin weighing things out. It's the last Sunday of the year. So how do we close the year off? It's sort of the start of the new year, looking at tomorrow. I thought of the Bible verse of the year last, I think, January the 7th. I preached on a text, "You are the God who sees me." The words of Hagar as she was alone in the desert with her son. So what do? I thought, well, Richard, you can take the verse of 2024 that is in Germanic Europe, and you can preach a sermon on that. The text would be, "And do everything with love." That would be fitting. Or then I thought, well, yeah, I had preached on Genesis 16:13, "You are the God that sees me," which led to a sequel, "You are the God who hears." But I decided against the verse of the year for the simple reason, when you do things several times in a row, like you sort of set a pattern, and then I thought, okay, I know what's going to happen then in 2025. I'm not ready to go there. You see, this is the day that Hazel and I are trying retirement again for the second time. And so I thought, well, no, Richard, you need to watch what you say. So instead of doing a trilogy to "You are the God who sees me, you hear me," I thought, way back in 1999, before some of you were born, it was the Y2K issue. You remember that? Yeah, and people were fearful. People were kind of anxious. Like, what is going to happen? These computers have been set up that the maximum date is 1999. And the year 2000 the computer is dumb, doesn't know it. People hadn't programmed it. They had just thought of 1999 as sort of being the end. And so they were fearful. Well, is our water going to shut off? Is our electricity going to shut off? Like, is everything just going to come to a standstill? And in pondering that, I was led to a phrase in Joshua 3, verse 4. "You have not traveled this way before." And I thought, well, that's been around for a few hundred years. Richard, take that text again. Now, you and I may have some of our wishes, our plans, some of ideas of what 2024 is going to bring. Some want to get married. Some are thinking of a new job that they're getting, a move that they're making. But really, when it comes right down to it, we don't know what the year 2024 is going to bring. We have not walked or we have not traveled this way before. So let me give this phrase, which I just pulled out of a context, let me give it some background information. So we go back in the Bible, Genesis. Pick up the story with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God's promise, "I will make a nation out of you, and I will bless all the other nations." Lots of ups and downs, Joseph and his brothers, but all sort of settles down in Genesis chapter 50. They're all in Egypt, and it's kind of nice. Exodus starts and things are turning sour. The descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are in slavery. Pharaoh had decreed that all the Hebrew boys should be killed when they are born at the time of birth. The story of Moses, he is protected. He grows up in Pharaoh's palace. Then he and his siblings, Aaron and Miriam, lead the people out of Egypt. The miraculous opening of the Red Sea, and they walk through, and God saves them. Next, what was a journey of over 40 years, which could have been a couple of weeks, they are in the wilderness, wandering around. Numbers chapter 13 records a story of 12 spies that are sent out into modern Israel, where various people groups lived. 10 of them gave a very negative report. There's no way that we can handle this. These people are far too strong, and we don't have a chance. Joshua and Caleb they give a minority report, and they say, with God's help, we can do it. There was so much complaining, so much grumbling, so much disbelief that God just about had enough. And he says, okay, guys, if you don't trust me, all of you old ones, like 20 and older, you're going to die here in the wilderness. You're going to be here that long until you die a natural death. So now, 40 years later, Numbers chapter 26, there are about 600,000 registered troops. Scholars suggest approximately 2 million people, including women and children. The families or clans of Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh are settled east of the Jordan. And here, in this story, something figures very prominently, an Ark of a Covenant, a testimony. It was a chest that measured 4 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, contained 2 stones, the law, a pot of manna from which they had been eating these 40 years, and Aaron's rod. It was symbolic of God's physical presence, his leading, and his provision. On the top of this Ark of the Covenant was a gold plate where the high priest, brought blood every year as an atonement for the sins of the people. It was a place of forgiveness. It reminds us of what we have here in front of us today, a communion table. More to that later. Now, the immediate scene. Moses, the 120-year-old stalwart leader, he had enough. He died. And he was buried, and the nation of Israel mourned his death for 30 days. God appoints Joshua to lead the Hebrew people into the promised land. But there was a slight problem. And this is now the immediate context. They are on the eastern shore of the Jordan River. And the river is at flood stage. The melting waters from the snow in the mountains is making its way down, and the river is flooding. Again, some people estimate 100 feet wide, 10 feet deep. Nothing insurmountable. There you see they're camped across from Jericho. Up north is Adam, a place that will be significant later on. 40 years wandering, and now the big change. What's the big change? Well, no more DoorDash coming. No more skip the dishes. God says, enough. I'm going to cut off the supply. Once you cross that river, the manna isn't going to come anymore. You're going to have to plant crops. You're going to have to harvest them. You're going to have to prepare food. You're going to have to think of a menu every day. You are on your own, so to say, when it comes to preparing meals. Well, that may be the outward change, or one of them. But what is inside? Now, in today's message, I'm going to take the application and weave it in with the story. And so the application is not going to come right at the end, but it's going to come as we go through. And so bear with me as I give some of the background information to that. The concept that I'm using for today's sermon is the concept of transitions, the personal side of change, the inside psychological process that people go through as they internalize and come to terms with the new situation that change brings about. Some changes affect us deeply, very deeply emotionally. They include marriage, death in the family or a spouse, birth of a child, a move, a change of job, retirement, or that casual visit to the doctor, and after a while the diagnosis comes back, it's cancer. Now, a change is that external thing that happens. The transition is the internal, what happens in my emotions, in my soul, in my mind as I try to make adjustments to it. These events are remembered, they deeply affect us, and they most likely change the trajectory of our lives. William Bridges, in his book, Managing Transition, writes there are three distinct phases: ending what currently is, the neutral zone, and the new beginning. So here you have it on a graph. Life begins with many things happening. We start with ending something. Now we want to get to beginning something new. But in between there is what he calls a neutral zone, which is by no means neutral in our feelings. It is turbulent. It is chaotic. It can be troubling to the depths. It can also be exciting and invigorating for us. Bridges writes, people go through an in-between time when the old is gone, but the new isn't fully operational. It is when the critical psychological realignments and patterning. You got it? Okay, I'm in a transition phase here, right? Okay, will take place. It's the time between the old reality and the new one. People are in flux. They may feel confusion and distress. Think of a trapeze artist. So he's grabbing onto his stick there, and he's going to make a swing. And he just starts pumping back and forth, and he sees a bar over there. But he knows, I can't swing far enough to grab the bar. I'm going to let go of this bar. I'll be flying through the air, and then I can grab that new bar. This in-between time. No ground under your feet. You are flying. It may look nice, but it might not feel that good. People say, well, I don't want that neutral zone. I'm going to hang on to the old. Anything that I have tried, I'm going to stay with it. Well, sorry, I've got some news for you. Change is going to come in your life whether you want it or not. You better learn to embrace it and learn to live with it and what this transition is about. Okay, so That was all table setting. Bring on the food. Okay, Joshua chapter 3. Let's look at the text. I'll read through this. Early the next morning, Joshua and all the Israelites left the Acacia Grove and arrived at the banks of the Jordan River, where they had camped before crossing. 3 days later, the Israelites' officers went through the camp, giving these instructions to the people. When you see the Levitical priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, move out from your positions and follow them. Since you have never traveled this way before, they will guide you. Stay about half a mile behind them, keeping a clear distance between you and the ark. Make sure you don't come any closer. Then Joshua told the people, purify yourself, for tomorrow the Lord will do great wonders among you. In the morning, Joshua said to the priests, lift up the Ark of the Covenant and lead the people across the river. And so they started out, and they went ahead of the people. The Lord told Joshua, today I will begin to make you a great leader in the eyes of the Israelites. They will know that I am with you, just as I was with Moses. Give this command to the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant. When you reach the banks of the Jordan River, take a few steps into the river and stop there. So Joshua told the Israelites, come and listen to what the Lord your God says. Today you will know that the living God is among us. He will surely drive out the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Jebusites ahead of you. Look, the ark of the Lord, which belongs to the Lord of the whole earth, will lead you across the Jordan River. Now choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. The priests will carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, and as soon as their feet touch the water, the flow of the water will be cut off upstream, and the river will stand up like a wall. So the people left their camp to cross the Jordan, and the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. It was harvest season, and the Jordan was overflowing its banks. But as soon as the feet of the priests who were carrying the ark touched the water on the river's edge, the water above that point began backing up a great distance away at a town called Adam, which is near Zaratan. And the river below at that point flowed on to the Dead Sea until the riverbed was dry. Then all the people crossed over near the town of Jericho. Meanwhile, the priests who were carrying the ark of the Lord's covenant stood on dry ground in the middle of the riverbed as the people passed by. They waited until the whole nation of Israel had crossed the Jordan on dry land. Good. Catch my breath. The Hebrew people were in the midst of a major change, a major transition. Life would never be the same anymore for them. They had new leadership, they would have a new lifestyle, and they would have a brand new location. And there was no turning back. This morning I want to draw principles from this text, what they meant then and what they can mean now. I want to be careful. I do not want to abuse the text and bend it to shape it to fit us on the last day of 2023. But I trust that these principles will help us navigate life's transitions or the neutral zone ourselves. The first thing, what's the first principle I see? Number one is wait. It says in Joshua chapter 3 that they came to the eastern bank of the Jordan and they settled down. They were there 3 days. And it was a way of getting used to where are we. I think they found it kind of intimidating. Like, why are we here right now when it's flood stage? Like, at non-flood stage, this is just a little creek here. Like, we can easily walk across it. Why does it have to happen right now? Waiting is a time to become aware of the impossibility, to become aware of the whole scope of the matter. But it is also time to become still, to listen to God, to recognize this is a huge endeavor that will require God's response. Wait does not mean do nothing. It means trust, hope, expect. The same word is used in Psalm 27:14. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he will strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. We live in a time in history where waiting seemingly is becoming more difficult. Technology allows us to live stream. And so there are people I trust sitting at home and watching there. God bless you. Love to see you here in the new year if possible. Technology allows us to have video calls. So yesterday, I just pressed my finger on my cell phone, and then all at once I see my children and my grandchildren in Austria, and I'm talking to them. Except for my youngest grandson, he says, I don't want to see Grandma and Grandpa in a box. I want them for real. And so he was out playing with his friend and only came in for the last couple of minutes of conversation. Waiting is difficult. But as mentioned, when there are major changes, there are major transitions. And wisdom speaks into these transitions and tells us, if you're getting married, be careful. Like, don't do major things like in terms of your job change and relocation. Like the Bible talks about the guy shouldn't go to war. Like, stay at home and enjoy life with your wife. Wisdom also speaks to making a move or retirement. It's a time to grieve. And coming back from 34 years in Europe, I remember Pastor James asking, can I speak with you sometime, get to know you? And I said, sure. And one of the questions he asked, well, Richard and Hazel, what do you want to do? You're back here for a couple of months now. Like, what would you like to do in West Portal? And we responded, give us 1 year of not doing anything. Let us just come and observe and participate, but without assuming responsibility. Thanks, James, for honoring that request. It helped us to transition, to grieve, to let go of what was 72% of our married life in a different country, on a different continent. Wisdom says that if you lose a loved one, don't make any major decisions for 1 year. Allow time to pass. Wisdom speaks to our finances. Sometimes young couples or singles, they want to start out life where their parents left off. and it's difficult. Waiting can be very beneficial as we establish relationships with each other. One financial advisor I read wrote, "Never spend more than $200 without giving yourself 48 hours to think about it." I don't know exactly when I read that. You can maybe adjust that to $300. I don't know what inflation is for you. But if you're making a major purchase, ponder it for some time. I know couples that have said, don't purchase anything over $50 without speaking to me unless we've mutually agreed to it and we've said, yes, we want that and it's on sale now and it costs $65 or whatever. You don't have to quickly phone me. Yes, that is okay. Waiting. Sometimes things in life need time for consideration, for pondering. I admit this is not always easy, but the extra time, yes, it allows for fears to rise, additional questions and concerns to surface, but on the other hand, it can be a time that leads to calmness, creative ideas can emerge, and a plan forward can be worked out. So, wait, a principle in the neutral zone. Secondly, a principle, communicate, communicate, communicate. Did you get it? Communicate, communicate, communicate. Here's this section in chapter 3. The officials go through the camp and they say, hey, something's going to happen. The priests are going out there and they're going to take the Ark of the Covenant. You keep your eyes open, keep them peeled, look, and when you see this happen, then something great is going to happen. The water's going to move back and you will walk through. Joshua speaks to the people. He says, purify yourself. God is going to do a great thing. Get rid of all of that junk and that garbage that you're carrying around with you. Let go of it. Let go. We're starting a new chapter. Joshua speaks to the priests. God will do wonders tomorrow. Lead. Be exemplary. Get out there. Take that Ark of the Covenant and carry it. And God speaks to Joshua. Today, I will make you a great leader in the eyes of all the Israelites. They will know that I am with you, just as I was with Moses. God has a personal message for Joshua. The people are still hanging on to Moses. And God gives his affirmation to Joshua and says, Joshua, I am with you. I will make you great. Interesting that Joshua doesn't say anything of that to the people. That was his personal message. And then Joshua goes to the people in verses 9 to 13, and he again clearly states what will happen. What is the principle that I draw from this in the neutral zone? The neutral zone is emotionally chaotic. It's got lots of ups and downs. And I believe it's important to communicate, communicate, communicate. Don't be like Richard. Did you get that? Don't be like Richard. For when Richard gets into a neutral zone where it is chaotic and where things are going and he doesn't know what's up or down, he becomes quiet. And poor Hazel wonders what is going on. What have I done? How come he's withdrawing himself? Richard is simply in a neutral zone, in a chaotic place, and he is quiet. This text, I believe, tells us when you're in that emotionally upset state, communicate. Talk to the people that are important to you. Become quiet and listen to God. What is he saying into your life? Inform your family what is happening. Why you're behaving somewhat different right now. Share your emotions, your feelings. Try and find words for them. We help ourselves and we help others if we communicate. Let God establish you and settle your nerves. And communicate and share with those around you. A third principle or third thing that I see in this chapter is reverence and respect. The Ark of the Covenant. There's a graphic there. It was a twofold significance. It represented the person and the promises of God. It pointed to the fact that as the people of Israel set out to cross the Jordan River, invade and possess it, this is not to be done in their own strength, but in the acknowledgement of God. God was going before them. He was the source of their victory. He would lead the way. Be reverent and worshipful before God. But this Ark of the Covenant that was carried ahead of the way by the priests also has a second meaning to me, and is being respectful of others. If there is distance, if there is no crowding, people can see. You have to think of probably 1.5 million people crossing this river. They needed to know the way. And so there needed to be this distance that people can see this Ark of the Covenant. Don't block others' line of sight. Give others a fair chance of seeing the way so they don't stumble on the riverbed stones, are not distracted by others, or forget that this is a God thing happening. My third principle here, Jesus is our Ark of the Covenant. He is God in human flesh. Through the Holy Spirit, we can experience God's presence, leading, provision, and power. As I was preparing one night, I awoke, and the words of this song that some of you may remember, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Keep Jesus in view. And realize it's not just about me. Yes, my life may be totally miserable, unfair, and everything else in this transition time. But take comfort in knowing, even though I have never traveled this way before, others have. Jesus has. The fourth thing that I learned from this chapter, as the priests walked towards that river, it says they stepped down into the river, into the water. And then the water, way up 70 kilometers north, the town of Adam, stopped. And that water passed by, and they noticed it's getting dry. At that point, The instructions were, go. Go. Don't hang on to that old. Go. You have to take a step in faith. Go. It was after the people had moved out of their tents, after the priests had dipped their feet in the water, that it became dry land. How this happened isn't recorded, but there's historical evidence that north at that place of Adam, there's limestone cliffs. And several times in the history of this world, there's been an earthquake where these cliffs, rock material has broken free and has covered the river and dammed it up. Whether that happened right then, I don't know. What was important is the timing. It was a miracle of timing. At very right, perfect moment, it happened. And that is my principle number 4. God is in charge of timing. I would dare say, if I went around and asked people here of where they experienced God's timing in their life, there would be many, many stories where it was just the difference of a couple of seconds between life and death. As you go into the new year, you have not walked this way before. Jesus has. Yes, in a different century, but through his Holy Spirit, he is still here. Walk with him. Be aware that God is the absolute master genius of timing. In the fullness of time, God sent his Son. And in the fullness of time in your life, God will do that miracle. Again, reviewing the 4 principles to transition well. Wait. Communicate. Reverence and respect. That keeping Jesus present in our mind and going forward. Since you have never traveled this way before, God will guide you. I want to pray, and during this time, the music team will come forward, and I'll also ask for those that are serving, helping with communion this morning, to come forward. Father in heaven, when all is said and done, as we come to the end of this year and we look to a new year, we have to recognize we have not gone this way before. We have plans. We have ideas, but we could be in for some major changes that will challenge the transitions, the things that go on in our soul and in our mind. May we transition well, knowing that you are with us. Amen.